Warm greetings, everyone. Today we are going to discuss a very beautiful poem written by William Blake. The title of the poem is The Little Black Boy. Let me tell you something about William Blake first. There can be no greater twist and turn of fate than the fact that William Blake, now hailed as the most poetical of all poets, had to live a life of drudgery and obscurity. Drudgery means very laborious he was. He had to work very hard in his life. When he died in 1827, obituary notices commemorated the pictorial artist and not the creative artist. Blake, the son of a hosier, was born in London on 28 September 1757. He had no formal education but studied drawing at a school in Strand and in early 1770s became a student briefly at the Royal Academy School. After this, at the age of 14, he was apprenticed to James Basire, a master engraver, to learn engraving, which was to be his trade for life. Engraving means nakkashi. In 1782, he married Catherine Boucher, the illiterate daughter of a market gardener who was to make him a good wife. This was all about his biography. Now, let me tell you something more about the poet. Blake was a mystic and a visionary who used symbolism and mythology in his own invention in these books. His wife once complained about his mystic trances. She said, "I have very little of Mr. Blake's company. He is always in paradise." One remarkable feature of Blake's poetry is that it stands unique in the mainstream traditions of English literature. Through his poetry, Blake questioned every accepted value of his age. His lyrical poetry anticipates the great change in the form and content of poetry that culminated in Romantic revival. Like all the great romantics, he also emphasized the significant role of imagination in poetry and said that one power alone makes a poet, imagination, the divine vision. He is now frequently classed with romantic writers, particularly Wordsworth and Coleridge. His major works include Songs of Innocence, which was published in 1789, and the first book of Urizen and Milton and Jerusalem. Blake's poetry is remarkably simple, at least on the first reading. His poetry owes very little to the 18th century neoclassical poetry which preceded it. In all, he was a revolutionary poet and one of the heralds of the Romantic movement. To quote Kathleen, Blake as a lyrical poet is unsurpassed. His vocabulary is as simple as that of a child. Every lyric is a window into the imaginative world. His poetic works embody some of the most perfect and most original lyrics in English language. Now, let me read this poem for you, The Little Black Boy. My mother bore me in the southern wild, and I am black, but oh, my soul is white. White as an angel is the English child, but I am black, as if bereaved of light. My mother taught me underneath a tree, and sitting down before the heat of a day, she took me on her lap and kissed me, and pointing to the east began to say, "Look on the rising sun, there God does live, and gives his light and gives his heat away, and flowers and trees and beasts and men receive comfort in morning joy in the noonday. And we are put on earth a little space, that we may learn to bear the beams of love, and these black bodies and this sunburnt face is but a cloud, and like a shady grove. For when our souls have learned the heat to bear, the cloud will vanish. We shall hear his voice, saying, 'Come out from the grove, my love and care, and round my golden tent like lambs rejoice.' Thus did my mother say, and kissed me, and thus I say to little English boy, when I from black and he from white cloud free, and round the tent of God like lambs we joy, I'll shade him from the heat till he can bear to lean in joy upon our Father's knee. And then I'll stand and stroke his silver hair and be like him, and he will then love me. Such a beautiful poem by William Blake. Now let us hurriedly start the summary portion of the poem. The first stanza first. My mother bore me in the southern wild, and I am black, but oh, my soul is white. White as an angel is the English child, but I am black as if bereaved of light. In these lines, the black boy says that his mother gave him birth in the southern wild, that is, in the forests of Africa, and hence he is black. However, he has no remorse over it because his soul is white, that is, very pious and beautiful soul he has. As he mentions the word white, he is reminded of English child who is as white as an angel, that is, in his fair skin color he looks like an angel. On the other hand, when he compares himself to that English child, he feels that he is black and rather looks like the shadow of light. So, in the first stanza, the black boy is feeling sorry for himself and his skin color. It happens only when he compares himself to the English child. Now, the second stanza. My mother taught me underneath a tree, and sitting down before the heat of day, she took me on her lap and kissed me, and pointing to the east began to say. Here, the black boy feels sorry for himself, but soon he stops pitying himself because one day his mother, while sitting under the tree in a hot summer morning, takes him on her lap, kisses him, and says something pointing towards the east because the sun rises in the east. The sentences continues to the next stanza. Look on the rising sun, there God does live, and gives his heat and gives his light away, and flowers and trees and beasts and men receive comfort in morning joy in the noonday. The poet uses the image of shadow to show its importance as it prevents one from the heat of the sun. It is used by the poet here in a positive sense because in the first stanza, the black boy regrets over his skin, which according to him is like a shadow. Thus, the use of shadow in the poem is quite significant. In these lines, in stanza 3, the black boy's mother asks him to look on the rising sun. It is the place where God lives and gives his heat as well as light to the flowers, to the trees, animals, and even human beings. All the living creatures enjoy the comfort of this blessing in the morning as well as in the noon, that is, for the whole day. Now, the next stanza. And we are put on earth a little space, that we may learn to bear the beams of love, and these black bodies, and this sunburnt face is but a cloud, and like a shady grove. Here the poet says that the mother tells his son that God has put the humans on earth, which is limited in size, for a little period of time, and in this little time the humans should learn to bear the beams of love. The line means that humans should learn to take everything given by God as a blessing, including their black skin. According to her, their black bodies and the sunburnt face is like a cloud as well as like a shady tree. These black faces or bodies are like clouds or shady grooves, shielding the soul from the intense heat and light of God. Now the next stanza. For when our souls have learned the heat to bear, the cloud will vanish, we shall hear his voice, saying, Come out from the groove, my love and care, and round my golden tent like lambs rejoice. In these lines, the mother tells the boy that when the bodies of the blacks, like the mother and the son, became accustomed to tolerating the heat of the sun, their souls will be free of the cloud, and they will be able to hear a divine voice asking them to come out of the groove to the divine care and love, to move about happily round the golden tent like happy lambs. Here in this stanza, the body is seen as a garment of the soul to be worn on earth. Once the child is spiritually prepared to face the brilliance of heaven, this material protection is no longer necessary. These black bodies and faces are mere clouds or shady grooves shielding the soul from the intense heat and light of God. Now, coming to the stanza 6. Thus did my mother say and kissed me, and thus I say to the English boy, when I from black and he from white cloud free, and round the tent of God like lambs we joy. The mother again kisses the black boy, who then goes to the English boy and tells him that when he will liberate from the black skin and the white boy from his white skin, both will live in the house of God and enjoy like the lambs. Now the last 4 lines of the poem. I'll shade him from the heat till he can bear to lean in joy upon our father's knee, and then I'll stand and stroke his silver hair and be like him, and he will then love me. In these lines, the black boy tells the white boy that when both of them will be in heaven, the former will cover the latter from heat until the latter could bear it. That is, the black boy will cover the white boy from the heat until the white boy learns to bear the heat of God. Then they will play with their father, that is, with God, and then the black boy will stand and play with the white boy's silver hair. He will be like the white boy when the skins will vanish away, and only then the white boy will love him as well. The final stanza reveals the attitude of the whites towards the blacks. The black boy has understood that he will never be able to get the love of the white boy because of his skin color, and hence he thinks that the white boy will only love him when his skin color will not be with him. The poem argues for racial equality, insisting that earthly identity is temporary and that all are worthy of God's divine love. This was all about The Little Black Boy, written by William Blake. I hope you have understood this poem well. Thank you and have a nice day.